Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to come here about a couple projects that PennDOT's working on. My name's Tom McClellan. I'm the Assistant District Executive for Design with PennDOT up here in Northwest Pennsylvania. And probably since about March of 2020, we've been doing a lot of things virtually because of the COVID and the pandemic, and that includes even reaching out to the public. So tonight we're using Microsoft Teams platform. Hopefully, it will run fairly smoothly. We do have some, this is one of our first couple times using it. So if there are some glitches tonight, please just bear with us. And again, I want to welcome you to the meeting here. Just as a reminder, as part of our efforts here, it's being recorded. So, you participating here tonight, you're consenting to allow your comments and your username to be recorded. So just want to make sure you're aware of that. Our team here tonight, we have our portfolio engineer, Ron Johnson. And then again, we're talking about two different projects here. The first one we're going to go over is the French Creek Parkway, US 6. And that's the portion that runs from Reynolds and Bessemer Street in Meadville north towards Sagertown, toward the stop sign at Baldwin Park Road, where the Meadville, the forge is up in that area. So we have a presentation on that section of highway. That project is actually in preliminary engineering right now. And, we're looking forward to hear your comments on it. So after that presentation, we're going to pause for about 5-10 minutes for questions. If there's any questions out there, you'll see a comment or a question and answer thing on the Microsoft Teams. You want to click that and enter your question there, and we're going to have somebody monitor during the evening here on that, and so we'll answer every single question. We are only going to leave 5 or 10 minutes for this after this first presentation. If we don't get to your question, we'll try to get to it at the end, and if we don't, we're definitely going to post the questions and the answers on our webpage, which we'll share with you at the end as well too. The second project is a study right now. It's the Spring Street Bridge replacement or realignment. So, and both these projects are being designed by consultants. PennDOT retained the services for Gannett Fleming for the Route 6 corridor, and for the Spring Street Bridge, that would be Dewberry. So both the project managers will be involved here, and they'll be going through the slides here. I talked about the questions. I talked about the two presentations. Again, if we experience any technical difficulties, please just bear with us, and we'll get moving. But I'm not going to waste any more time here, and we'll go to the first presentation here on the French Creek Parkway. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and allow the other presentation to come up. So again, thank you for your participation tonight. And one thing too, if you have any friends, neighbors, or anybody else that couldn't make the meeting here tonight, this will all be available on our webpage, so they can come and take a look at it. There'll be a comment card there, so they'll have a couple weeks to take a look at that information too. So if there's somebody here that a neighbor or friend or somebody that has an interest, please let them know as well. So thanks again, and we'll move on to the next presentation.
Okay, we had a little bit of problems connecting our consultant, Greg Samara. So this is Chris Boyer-Krantz. I'm going to be handling the French Creek Parkway project. I'm the project manager for PennDOT for it. This project goes along Route 6. Hannah, can you go to the next slide? We're going to go over the project overview, purpose, need, corridor characteristics, proposed alternatives, traffic control during construction, pollinator habitat, which is a unique opportunity we have on this project that we haven't on projects in the past, steps moving forward, what our next steps are going to be, and also project input and feedback that we've received to date, and a chance for you guys too as well. Project overview. Most of you are probably familiar with this section of Route 6. It's just north of Meadville. It's where the 4 lanes are. It goes through Meadville and West Mead Township from Reynolds Avenue up to Baldwin Extension. Next slide. We've had a previous public meeting on this when there was a planning study that was done. These are the concepts that were discussed during that public meeting in 2008. 4-lane reconstruction, reconstruct 2 lanes, and then also concept 3, 2 lanes with a trail, and concept 4 is 3 lanes with the service road. It was also mentioned in the previous public meeting about the possibility of doing roundabouts at the 2 at-grade intersections. There are some additional considerations that have us not looking at roundabouts at this point for those intersections. Next slide. Project purpose. Any of you that have driven this section of road are probably familiar with the fact that we are reaching the end of the useful life for this roadway. The pavement has deteriorated. There's some roadway geometry here as well that isn't up to our current standards. We do things a little bit differently now. Next slide. This just summarizes, we've got deteriorated conditions of existing pavement. It ranges from fair to serious, and we'll go over that in a following slide. There's really not much pedestrian and bicycle accommodation through this section. And the crash history through here shows individuals and clusters of crashes at the intersections along the corridor. All right, this slide goes over the corridor characteristics. There's a lot of information on here. On the top right here, you've got the average traffic for each section of the roadway. Just below that, it goes through level of service. Level of service is a little bit like grades you got in school with A, B, C, D, and E, but it's not exactly like that. Level of C, B, and D are levels of service that are really conducive to best use of that roadway. When you have a level of service A, it's great. You've got plenty of roadway. If you see where the cars are there, you've got 2 cars and all that extra road. So you actually have more road than you need. So it's not a great use of taxpayer dollars to be at level A. So right now we are level A through this corridor, so we do have more roadway than we are utilizing with the traffic levels that we have. And you can see our daily traffic through there is 5,700 vehicles with a truck percentage of 6.3. Next slide. All right, this slide shows us what the pavement condition is like, with red being severe or serious condition, up through green being good. So you can see most of the pavement through this area is in serious, poor, or very poor condition, with some areas of fair. One of the things you need to consider is a lot of times you can go through and you can fix areas with a simple repavement. But once you get to the point where the concrete pavement distress levels lower than 2 to 5%, that really is not something you can just pave over. At that point, you need a lot of work to get that pavement back. So replacement is a more cost-effective option. So next slide. All right. There are some structures through there. We've got Spring Street Bridge, which is our other presentation today. A corridor, or I mean a box culvert that goes underneath Route 6, and then there's also an overpass. Terrace Street goes over Route 6, and both the box culvert and Terrace Street are in fairly good condition, so we're not looking at replacement of them right now. Spring Street, though, only has a remaining lifespan of 8 years, so that's why that project is also being discussed today. Crash history. If you look at this slide, you can see where each of these dots represents a type of accident that we've had. So those accidents are clustered at the intersections, with a lot of them happening at the very north end there as Baldwin Street comes in together. Those are fixed object, moving vehicle, and side swipes. So a lot of those are characteristic of that type of geometry. And at the other intersections, you can see those angle animals, a couple deer probably through there, rear ending, and fixed object. So next slide. All right, proposed alternatives. We've got three potential alternatives that we're going to discuss with you today. The first one is to replace all 4 lanes, eliminating a wide median and at-grade intersections, or the wide median at the at-grade intersections. Alternative 2 is to replace 2 lanes using the alignment of the existing US 6 westbound lanes. Alternative 3 is using 2 lanes with a multi-use trail on the US eastbound lanes. So you do the same thing as alternative 2, but then instead of just pulling out those other lanes, the pavement would be reused as subbase under a trail. Some other information we're going to go over is the northern tie-in at the intersection being reconfigured, and the potential for Terrace Street to be done at a future date when that bridge reaches the end of its life as a separate project. All right, alternative 1, 4 lanes. This is just a quick little image of what that would look like. A lot like what it is right now. Next slide. The big changes with the 4 lanes will be at those at-grade intersections at Stan Road and Baldwin Street. There would be some additional turning lanes put in there to help assist with those accidents that are happening at those intersections. Proposed alternative 2 is 2 lanes, leaving the unused existing pavement over on the side there would actually be tore out so that drainage would continue in that area for stormwater. And that would also have at-grade intersections. You can see there where the red X's are, that's the section of pavement that would be removed. And those would be stop controlled intersections. Alternative 3 is 2 lanes with a trail. The trail would be multi-use trail. You'd be able to use it for biking, jogging, walking. It would be separate from the roadway. There would be a barrier, not a barrier in between, but a grassy median in between. So it would not be adjacent to the roadway like a wide shoulder. And here's showing what those intersections would look like in that case. You would still have stop control. You'd have at-grade crossings of the multi-use trail in addition to the stop controlled intersections. All right, the northern tie-in would be changing. It would be coming in since Baldwin Street. Should have pointed this out on the earlier slide. Baldwin Street has a lower ADT than what US 6 does. So it makes sense to bring it in as a perpendicular intersection at this point. So you would be losing that section of roadway that's X'd out there. You'd have 2 lanes, 1 northbound, 1 southbound, and Baldwin Street would come in at a 90-degree angle with a stop control. Proposed alternatives. This is a matrix that we like to do on all of our projects so that it can kind of show where we are with each alternative for the different characteristics that we consider. Maintenance effort, the existing configuration is very high because of the 4 lanes and the median that needs mowed. There's a lot of work there, and to repave and replace that pavement, that's a higher value on a, or maintaining it on a regular basis. The crash potential there stays medium. Level of service for the roadway is an A. A is good. Sometimes A is a little bit too good. It means that we're not actually utilizing all of the roadway for the amount of traffic we have. And the reconstruction cost is the $9,100,000. Alternative 1, 4 lanes. Maintenance effort for this is still high because you're talking all that pavement still. Crash potential is a little bit lower because it's adjusting those intersections and getting some turning lanes in there. Roadway level of service is still at a level A, and we're not going to be utilizing all of that roadway surface that we'll have out there. Reconstruction cost is $14,990,000. Alternative 2, 2 lanes. Maintenance effort there is the lowest out of all the options because you've got the least amount of pavement. That also means the least amount of pavement to be plowing in the winter. So that helps get those tax dollars spread a little further. Crash potential is medium. Roadway level of service is C. Again, C is not bad. C means we're utilizing that roadway surface to the best of our ability and we're not overbuilding or underbuilding. Reconstruction cost there is $11,060,000. Alternative 3 is 2 lanes with a trail. Maintenance effort for this one goes up to medium because of that trail surface. The maintenance of the trail surface would fall under whoever adopts that trail. Crash potential is a medium, and roadway level of service stays at C. You'll also notice the reconstruction cost is actually $20,000 less to do the trail, and that's because we would not be removing all of the existing roadway material that would be used as subbase underneath the trail surface. Next slide. All right, Terrace Street. Terrace Street is not proposed as part of this project. It is something that we are considering how it will be done in the future under this project, just in case. We didn't want to build something and then have it not work with Terrace Street in the future. There is a chance we might do a little bit of rehab on the bridge under this if it needs it at the time. Those costs aren't included in the previous slide for the matrix. Next slide. All right. Traffic control during construction. Existing configuration, you've got westbound and eastbound lanes. During phase 1 of reconstruction, traffic would be moved over so that it was on the eastbound lane and work would be done on the westbound lane. During phase 2, work would be done on the westbound lanes, so both traffic moving eastbound and westbound would be moved over there, and then work would commence in the eastbound lanes, either removing that work or removing that pavement and putting in a trail, or just removing that pavement as well as the subbase. All right, our steps moving forward, we've got public feedback, which is where we are right now. Once we get feedback from the public, we move into alternative selection. From alternative selection, we'll know whether or not we're doing alternative 1, 2, or 3. We will share that information with the public and move on with preliminary design and then final design with construction starting in 2022. All right. one of the things that I mentioned earlier is this project does have a unique opportunity for pollinator habitat. As a lot of you have probably heard, bees are having a difficult time of it right now. So are monarch butterflies and a few other pollinators that are native to our area. Because this project already has a lot of right-of-way in the area, we have the opportunity to put in some naturalized gardens or even some more refined gardens somewhere along this corridor if there are people that are interested in upkeeping. There will be information on our website if there are any groups that are interested in participating. This is a great opportunity for any garden groups in the area, possibly Boy Scouts or any other group. And anyone who's interested in this can contact me, look at the presentation on the website, and it could either be a large area towards the north end of the project, where right now we have the realignment of Baldwin Street going on, or even smaller garden areas along the corridor itself. Okay. Project input and feedback. Project information. This tells you how to get to that information that I was just talking about. This presentation will be there as well. You go to the PennDOT District 1 website, public meetings and studies. There will be a block that says Crawford County. When you click there, you'll get a block that'll say French Creek Parkway Project. And any comments or questions?
Hi, everybody. This is Saxon Doherty speaking. I am the Safety Press Officer in District 1 for PennDOT, and I am monitoring the Q&A and chat features this evening, and we do have 3 questions so far. So I'll go ahead and read off the first one here to be answered. I'll start with Chris, and if you want to pass on to anybody else, you can do that.
Okay.
First question is, why were the westbound lanes selected for the travel lanes in alternatives 2 and 3?
That's partially because of Terrace Street. If we were to go to an at-grade crossing with Terrace Street in the future, since there is an elevation change there between top of the hill there where Baldwin Street is and US 6, we would be eliminating that hill, and to reduce the amount of work that would need to be, or earthwork that would need to happen, it makes more sense to use the westbound lane.
Okay, thank you. The second question is, could you describe the speed limits which would preliminarily be expected for Route 6 in each alternative?
Speed limits we're anticipating staying the same for each alternative.
That's correct, Chris. Yeah, 55 miles per hour. And one other thing on the previous question, if you move traffic over into the westbound lanes, the eastbound lanes are closer to the community and closer to connect a potential bike trail. So that's one of the other benefits of looking at those lanes as well. So.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, and lastly, here I have, there is a decent amount of pedestrian and bicycle traffic on Baldwin Street extension. Is there potential for a multi-use trail to serve Gill Village in particular? Would it be possible to work with the city of Meadville to connect Gill Village directly to the multi-use trail?
I'm off the top of my head, I'm not familiar with where Gill Village is exactly. There definitely is a possibility of connecting that intersection there, bringing that trail over to Baldwin Street to connect there. If they're asking about going any further than that, that would have to be a separate discussion.
Okay, does anybody have any other comments on that? If not, those are the questions I have to this point. Actually, got one other one that just popped up. Regarding the south end of the multi-use trail, what that might look like. tying that to the street grid to make the trail more accessible and usable?
Once we select that alternative, that's when we'll have more discussions on that. Right now, I don't believe there's a lot of sidewalk in that area, so some of it may attach back as expanded shoulder through there, but until we've identified a group that wants to adopt and maintain it, it's hard to say what preferences might be out there in the community.
Okay, and then I did have one other one pop up as you were answering. I believe it should be where would the trail connect at both ends? Or what would it connect to?
Okay, it would connect to any existing sidewalk in the area or to widen shoulders on the road. That's something that we can discuss with any trail groups or municipalities that are interested in adopting it. Because PennDOT does not maintain trail networks, for us to move forward with the trail option, we would need a group that's interested in maintaining that and taking ownership of it moving forward.
Okay, thank you. And right now, that is all the questions that we have. So I think we're ready to move on to the next step.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, I'm Gary Fournette with Dewberry, and the second presentation that we have for you this evening is on the Spring Street Bridge Improvement Project. And we have two alternatives that we've been studying on this project through the study phase that we're in currently. Okay, so the topics I want to cover in this presentation are listed here. First, I'll give a brief project overview and explain the purpose and need for the project. I'll describe the existing conditions that are driving the need for the project, and then discuss the two alternatives that are under consideration. And the first of those is a new bridge on a shifted alignment. The second is restoration of the existing bridge. Following that, I'll provide a summary that basically will include like a comparative summary between those two alternatives. And then again, we'll have time for questions and comments and your feedback. Okay, so PennDOT's considering improvement options for the Spring Street Bridge, which carries State Route 2034, and I'll refer to that as SR 2034, as well as Spring Street. And this, of course, is in the city of Meadville, and it's basically located at the southern end of the project that was previously presented. So two alternatives have been developed through the study phase to address the purpose and need of the project. And the project purpose is essentially twofold. First is to restore a structurally sound and cost-effective Spring Street crossing of French Creek and an efficient crossing of the New York or the Western New York and Penn Railroad. And then the second aspect of that is to maintain connection with Route 6 and other roadways in Meadville. And each of these alternatives has a different approach to meeting that project purpose. The need for the project is primarily these three items shown here. The first is poor condition due to aging and deterioration of the reinforced concrete and steel bridge components. So steel and concrete bridges typically can last a long time, but once they begin to deteriorate, that deterioration is increasingly progressive And really that leads to costly maintenance needs. And then the third item listed here is what we would consider to be the only real geometric deficiency of the bridge, and that's the narrow bridge shoulders. Okay, so the existing Spring Street Bridge has 12 spans. As I mentioned, it crosses French Creek, Route 6, the French Creek Parkway, and the Western New York and Penn Railroad. The traffic volume across the bridge is on average over 5,000 vehicles per day. And you can see a photo here that shows a view of one of the existing bridge piers looking east, and this is looking across the railroad tracks toward French Creek Parkway. So on the underside of the bridge, you can see some dark areas and some white areas, which indicate those are deposits of calcium, and that's caused by road salts that leak into the concrete and corrode the steel inside the concrete. So the beams of this bridge are actually steel beams that are encased in concrete for protection. And that's an older type of construction that, you know, we don't see that anymore. We don't use that because the problem is it's difficult to maintain with that concrete cover. So you can't just go and repaint the steel. So again, that's where those costly maintenance needs are coming from. And you can see the condition of this pier is actually not bad. Some of the piers have more deterioration than what you see on this one. And that's really where there's areas where water is leaking through deck joints in the bridge and causing more deterioration at some of those pier locations. Okay, this is a plan view from when the bridge was constructed back in 1951. And at that time, the Erie Railroad occupied the area on the East River bank, which is on the left side of French Creek in this view. So you can see some mainline tracks, some siding, and several railroad yard or buildings within the yard. So that area was quite a bit different at the time. On the west side, you can see the Fifth Ward area down in the lower right, which was pretty well developed at that time. So I mentioned that the bridge carries a pretty significant amount of traffic, vehicles. It's also used by pedestrians and bicyclists. And one of the unusual aspects of the bridge is the stairway on the east bank that connects the bridge down to Bessemer Street. This ramp or this stairway structure doesn't meet what is currently required by the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, for accessibility. So what that really means is that the ADA criteria would call for a ramp type structure that would be accessible by wheelchairs, for example. And here you can see a map of bicycle route Y shown in with the brown line across the map, and the project location where the bicycle route crosses, uses Spring Street to cross through the project location. So this designated bicycle route generally follows US Route 6 across the entire northern tier of Pennsylvania from Ohio to New York. And this photo here, looking east across the bridge, shows the narrow existing shoulders on the bridge deck. And they really don't provide what's needed for bicycle traffic. There's the sidewalk that's accommodates pedestrians, but sidewalks really aren't designed or considered to carry bicycle traffic. Okay, so this is a plan that shows alternative 1, which is the new bridge on shifted alignment. And you can see Spring Street in yellow. The realigned portion extends from the left, the intersection with Lincoln Avenue, across French Creek, and then meets up with Bessemer Street and extends onto the Route 6 intersection. So what this is doing is replacing the longer existing viaduct structure with a new shorter bridge that spans only across French Creek and eliminates the spans over Route 6 and the railroad. Construction of this new bridge could be done while traffic is maintained along the existing bridge. So that is one aspect of this project that we'll want to contrast with alternative 2. And then another aspect is that this alternative, with this alternative, Spring Street crosses the railroad at the existing Bessemer Street grade crossing rather than on the existing overpass. So that's another important difference between these two alternatives. And then along with that, alternative 1 has some fairly significant changes to traffic patterns. So we can see the intersection here of realigned Spring Street with Bessemer Street. And so we have a T intersection with a stop sign control for Bessemer Street. And with this alternative, we'd likely need to prohibit left turns from Bessemer Street onto the new realigned Spring Street Bridge. And that's because of traffic or safety concerns related with the volume of traffic and the signalized intersection with Route 6 just to the east. And the fact that traffic would be traveling west along Spring Street, coming from different directions at that intersection. And now to look more at traffic pattern changes at the next 3 intersections. First of all, we have realigned Spring Street and US Route 6 shown here. So the existing intersection is signalized, and we'd have that same condition with alternative 1, with the difference that there's a lot more traffic volume from Spring Street moving through the intersection. So if we go beyond the study phase that we're in right now, we need to look a lot more closely at the signal retiming and the best way to implement this signalization. For example, we want to make sure that the railroad crossing, that the crossing gates there are coordinated with the signal and things like that. So moving to the next intersection, this is where realigned Spring Street would meet up with Terrace Street and Reynolds Avenue. So the thing to note here is that these stop signs control all the directions except the Spring Street through movement, which would be basically turning from, I guess, heading to the east towards the intersection and then turning to the north. So again, Spring Street would have the right of way and the priority movement, with the other directions having stop sign control. And then finally up to the 3rd intersection, similar situation here where we want to maintain the unrestricted movement along Spring Street so that Spring Street traffic can flow more or less continuously with stop control for the other directions. Okay, so this diagram here shows basically that we have 11-foot travel lanes, 5-foot shoulders, and a sidewalk on the right side, which would be the south side of the road, where it is along existing Spring Street. So the thing to note here is that the eastbound direction, were shown by the red cars, we have 2 traffic lanes, and that's because this direction is approaching the signalized intersection with US Route 6. And then we have one direction westbound shown by the blue car. Another important aspect of alternative 1 to consider is effects on the floodplain. So this is a map showing the floodplain of French Creek, and it's actually a combined floodplain of French Creek and Cusawago Creek. So the shaded areas are the areas within the floodplain that are inundated by the larger flood flows that are established by the flood insurance mapping that FEMA produces. So for alternative 1, changing the location of the bridge and changing the configuration to a shorter span that crosses French Creek at a lower elevation those are important changes that would need to be looked at in detail to make sure that alternative 1 would not result in increased flood risk within the floodplain. Okay, if we move now to alternative 2, you can see what that looks like in this plan view. And you can see what's shown in yellow is basically replacement or restoration of the existing bridge at its existing location. So restoration would likely mean replacement of the upper part of the bridge, the deck and beams. The piers, like we saw in the photo earlier, could be repaired or partially replaced based on a further study of their condition. So some piers could be eliminated, some could be reconstructed. With this alternative, again, we're widening the shoulders out to 5 feet. And with alternative 2, we have no changes to the existing traffic patterns. And you can see what's shown in red is a possible replacement of the existing stairway with a ramp type structure. Okay, a similar diagram for alternative 2 also shows 11-foot lanes, 5-foot shoulders, and sidewalk at similar location. Main difference here is only 1 lane for eastbound traffic rather than 2. Okay, I mentioned that alternative 1 could be constructed. The new bridge could be constructed while traffic is maintained along the existing bridge during construction. That's really not possible for alternative 2. So with alternative 2, we'd have to close the bridge completely during construction. And so a potential detour route shown here has a length of about 4.2 miles. And our early estimates for the duration of construction, for the duration of the detour, is roughly 12 to 14 months. Okay, so again, if we look at that floodplain map, the thing to note about alternative 2 is that we're not changing the location or the basic configuration of the bridge, so we don't have any real possibility of any increased flood risk with the alternative. Okay, so next I'll just show these 2 slides, which basically show the as constructed layout of each alternative. You can see alternative 1 with the old alignment eliminated, so you can see the route that Spring Street changes to as it crosses over French Creek, then matches up with Bessemer Street, US Route 6, Terrace Street, and then finally the existing alignment of Spring Street to the east of Terrace Street. And then here's the layout for alternative 2, which is essentially the existing layout of Spring Street and the other streets in this area. Okay, so similar to the last presentation, we have a matrix here that gives a measure of comparison based on what we've listed here. Changes to traffic patterns, how the railroad is crossed, traffic control during construction, floodplain impact. So I talked about most of these differences as I went through, but I'll go through quickly again. So changes to traffic pattern, you can see for alternative 1, we have Spring Street intersecting with Bessemer, US Route 6 and Terrace Street. No change to traffic patterns for alternative 2. The railroad crossing. Spring Street crosses the railroad at the existing Bessemer Street grade crossing. So that's an existing crossing, but what happens with alternative 1 is we have a lot more traffic crossing the railroad at that grade crossing with Spring Street at the crossing. Alternative 2, Spring Street stays on the overpass, so that's really no change from the existing condition. Traffic control during construction, alternative 1, the concept there is to maintain traffic on the existing bridge while the new bridge is built. And for alternative 2, the bridge needs to be closed with a detour. And as I mentioned, we're estimating that to be on the order of 12 to 14 months. Floodplain impacts would need to be studied in much more detail. For alternative 1, the idea is we want to make sure that there's no increase in flood risk to properties that are within the floodplain. Alternative 2, no real change to the bridge configuration, so we don't have those potential floodplain impacts. Neither alternative would result in any business or residential displacements. But then finally, in terms of cost, and this is based on what we projected for a 100-year life cycle. Alternative 1 on the order of 10 million, alternative 2 on the order of 15. So very early rough order of magnitude cost estimates, but the trend that we see there is a lower cost for alternative 1 with elimination of the longer bridge structure. Okay, and then the steps moving forward on this project, what we have is basically public feedback at through this meeting tonight, and then from there the next step will be alternative selection, and then at that point there'll be some notification, so possibly another public meeting or some form of notifying what the selected alternative is for the project. On the lower level of the slide here, preliminary design would run roughly from this summer through spring of 2023. The final design phase, spring 2023 through fall of 2023, and then that could lead to the project being in construction in the spring to summer months of 2024. Steve Shetler is the PennDOT project manager for this project, so he would be a point of contact for any comments or questions. And then following the meeting, there's also a way to get updates and provide any comments or questions after tonight as well. And those steps are listed here.
Okay, I do have a couple questions if we're ready for that. Okay, our first question is, how many piers are within the channel of French Creek with either option?
What we'd want to do with alternative 1 is we'd have a total of 3 piers based on what we've laid out at this stage. And we would try to locate them in a way that they're on existing islands within the French Creek Channel. I think we have that same number of piers with alternative 2, but there may be a possibility of reducing the number of piers for alternative 2 from the existing condition. So it may be possible to eliminate a pier within French Creek.
Okay. I have a question about the first project, but I'll do that one here after I run through the next 2 pertaining to this project. Is there a way for the Spring Street project to bring the proposed multi-use trail down from Terrace to Reynolds as part of it?
I'm not sure how well I can answer that, because our focus has been primarily on, you know, the bridge and the bridge location between these 2 alternatives. So as far as connectivity.
Yeah, I'll help you out, Gary. This is
Sure.
Tom. And yeah, I think, you know, that's why one of the reasons why we're having the meeting tonight with both, you know, to learn about both projects here, because there are some similarities and there's some ways that maybe we can connect a trail. But again, you know, like we said with the first presentation, we really need to find somebody who's going to maintain a trail, you know, and if we can do that and then work it into both projects so it connects across the bridge and maybe some kind of ramp structure down to Reynolds and Bessemer, you know, we can look into that. So you know, that's why we're here tonight, is to get your ideas and your feedback. So we appreciate the comment.
Thanks, Tom. Another question would be, with alternative 1, what measures could be used to reduce the confusion of having Spring Street be effectively discontinuous between Route 6 and Terrace? Are there any precedents for this?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think, I guess what I would have to say about that is that if the project moves beyond the study phase that we're in right now, you know, that would become a focal point, is looking at ways to facilitate traffic flow, you know, along that realignment. We've primarily focused on the bridge crossing of French Creek and just getting a basic concept for what it could be, but keeping in mind also that there are some possible options to address those traffic pattern changes.
Yeah, Gary's right. The traffic pattern changes, you know, that he kind of laid out, those other intersections, that they got to be studied a little bit more. I mean, you know, what we showed tonight was just kind of a stop sign options in those areas. But I mean, depending on the flow of traffic and the studies, I mean, you could look at some different things there. You know, even with on the other side, you know, how it ties into that road, you know, how we showed a no left turn. I mean, maybe if that's somehow signalized and connected to the other signal, maybe, you know, over on the east side of town, maybe somehow there's a roundabout in there. So, you know, there's a lot of different things that still need studied. But again, like I said, we got the slate clean, and we want to hear opinions and options. And, you know, if heard good feedback on the trail, you know, why'd we pick one side over another? So, you know, any of those inklings or anything that we can glean from the community, or for the next couple of weeks when this study is available on the website that you see on your screen here, you can go in and find some more information. That's why we're here. You know, because I don't think any of us live there right now, at least not part of my team. But you know, we want to hear from the people that live there and you know, have that working knowledge. So thank you.
Great. Okay, and the last question I have here is reverting back to our first project tonight. Do any of the alternatives impact homeowner property lines? Specifically, would the footprints of the Parkway widen or shift in such a way that homeowners would lose land?
Saxon, is my screen live now? I brought up slide 16 for my presentation.
Showing the northern tie-in intersection. We can,
Yes.
yep. It is
Okay.
up.
All right. It did share right. I think this is where they're asking that question. As you can see, we're trying to keep the roadway over the existing as much as possible. So we're not anticipating needing any right of way because there's quite a bit of right of way we already have at this end of the project, and we're not actually anticipating needing right of way anywhere at the lower end of the project either. Right where this stop sign is located is this is one of the areas that we might actually have that opportunity for a pollinator garden that I brought up in my presentation, but really we would just be realigning this intersection a slight bit, staying within our existing right of way. Was that the last question?
Yes, I do not have any other questions in the queue. So again, we
Okay.
appreciate that, all the interaction and feedback. Very good questions.
Okay, I just wanted to remind people that if you go to our website and look at the project information there, we have comment forms for both of these projects. So if you think of a question later on, that's another opportunity to share it, fill out a comment form or contact either of the project managers. So are there still no new questions?
I don't see any, so.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for participating tonight. It was great to be able to share these with everyone.
Yeah, again, I want to echo Chris's sentiment, and if we could just share that last slide again with the website information, if people want to jot that down. Whoever had the presentation, if you had it, Chris or Gary. I think Gary had it, I think so. If you want to go ahead and share your screen again, Gary, get to that last slide just so people can have that, and thank you. Perfect. So it's PennDOT.gov, and then you go to regional offices, which is District 1, and then there's public meetings and studies in Crawford County and French Creek Parkway, Spring Street, US 6. So again, like I said, I know there's people that probably couldn't make the meeting or had other things going on, but again, you know, we'll leave the comment period open for a couple weeks, see what else is going. You know, if we hear any other news, and again, I appreciate everybody's time tonight and helping us here. And again, with that, I guess we'll sign off here if there's no further questions here. So well, hearing none and seeing none, you know, please get a hold of our project manager, Steve or Chris, if anything comes up, or, you know, through our webpage there. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks. See ya.